Hi, my name's Jamie Hassick, part of Hx2. When I'm not writing for iHeartBeer.net, brewing beer, or drinking beer with my friends and family, I'm on the show talking to you about beer. So we hope you enjoy the show.
I am Jason Hammond. I do write for iHeartBeer.net. I am a member of the Pines Templar. I am located in Southwest Ohio, so most of my content does come from my locale, Columbus, Cincinnati, Dayton area. But as I do get to travel out, you'll see more and more as my circle widens.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you again. My name again is Jamie Hassick, and thank you for watching the show. And I'm going to go down a quick breakdown through everything that we are going to cover, at least today, for this epic episode of episode 1. So today we're going to start off with Jason Hammond. He's going to talk about starting out books, some of the social media, the YouTube things that you can find on there, as well as find friends and brewers that would be in your area to assist you. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what you need for the equipment, where to get it, and try to guide you towards how to get it on a budget. And then we're going to lead into current news, beer plugs, and things of that nature. So that's pretty much going to be the wrap up of episode 1. Not too complex, starting off basic for the basic brewer, but if you are an advanced guy, I want you to hang in there because we also have stuff from you and we want to bring you on to the show. So without delay, let us get started. And again, let me introduce you to the big man himself, J.M. Hammond, Jason Hammond. Please go ahead and kick off the show with what you got, brother.
Thanks, Jamie. So I'll just jump right into it. We're bringing it to you, talking about how to get started, basic homebrewing, and the biggest thing for me was definitely studying up before I got started. I had a co-worker that talked about it, got my mind kind of in the mode of home brewing and led me down the path. So I did a bunch of internet reading, YouTubing, decided to go brew in a bag, and definitely found all of the things on YouTube that I could under BIAB or brew in a bag. Watched tons of videos, but the more traditional way to go is definitely your books out there. I have several that I turn to. John Palmer's How to Brew. I think universally it's pretty much the Bible. John goes around, works with a lot of brewers, a lot of breweries, even the home guys. He's definitely very passionate about his brewing. He, as we like to say, breaks it down Barney style, as most of these books do. I know Charlie Papazan's Joy of Homebrewing kind of is fashioned in this manner, where they take you through a very basic extract brew, then take you to a partial mash, then take you into your all-grain brewing, and then kind of break down the process, take you through what the yeast actually does, what the grains actually add, the different flavors and styles of hops, and then kind of gets a little more advanced, takes you into flavors and smells and things that happen when you go wrong, how do you recover, and so on and so forth, clear into very, very high level advanced stuff, which we'll get into down the road. Things like your water treatment and some other advanced techniques that are involved in brewing once you get to a pro level. One of the other resources that a lot of people don't think of is your homebrewing recipe book. This is one that sometimes is hit or miss, but the particular book that I've got, the Homebrewer's Recipe Guide, it's from 3 friends of Charlie Papazan, actually, and he wrote the foreword for it. It's from Patrick Higgins, Mark Haight Kilgore, and Paul Hertline. But laced throughout the book of recipes, there are tons of quality tips to tell you little things that you might not find in some of these bigger books, and I found going through that book very useful. And then, of course, when you're talking about media, one of the other things that the home brewer should rely on rather heavily is your college line notebook for what you're doing yourself. And be sure to document it all, from your recipes to your tips and tricks and hints, and any other things that you think are necessary. Write it down, because if you want to make it again, you got to know what you did the first time. 1, to improve on it, and 2, to make it close to what you did last time. So when you're getting down to it, really, a trip to the library, a trip to Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, any of your online bookstores can easily get you started. As well as, don't knock your social media. I know a lot of people say if you see it on the internet, yeah, it might be true, but we have a great commodity in the homebrewing community, and it is a community. And those of us that are passionate about brewing, we really like to talk about it. We like to talk about it with others. We like to bring people in. We like to share, and that's one of the joys of this as well. Jamie and I came together over the love of homebrew and writing about it, and I've got friends all over the country and even out of the country that the one thing brought us together was the nectar of the gods, as they call it, and the homebrewing as it goes. So that's kind of what I've got when it comes down to the books. Jamie, do you have anything you'd like to throw in?
Good, yeah. Thanks, brother. You covered it very well. One of the things, or a few of the things I would like to cover when it comes to that is to capitalize on what Jason was saying. It was very interesting to me that you don't have to spend a lot of money. The library is something that ends up being a miss to a lot of people, and if you look at the shelves lately, that's a very good point, brother, and people don't realize that there's a lot of books on there, especially about craft brew in general, that they've actually started putting onto the shelves itself. So great point. There is a bunch of different books out there that will be sitting on shelves, and I'm not trying to downplay any of those books. One of the first one that my wife gave me was Dave Miller's Homebrewing Guide. So God bless her, because this is the thing that got it all started and part of the passion for me. And we talked before, it smells of old beer, and it reeked mess a little bit, and is highlighted and it was tore up and down. But I'm not even sure what edition this one was. But be careful what you do get, because things have evolved and actually changed. And some of the older literature, although a lot of it is relevant, some of the stuff might not be as much today with the different techniques and everybody's talking about. So pay attention to that. He did mention, Palmer. God bless Palmer. For some of the advanced brewers, though, my sister herself, who's an herbalist, got me this book right here, which is a sacred and herbal healing beers, Secrets of Ancient Fermentation. So if you want to up it a little bit, and it's funny, it does seem to be like some of the more adventurous and advanced stuff is going back further in time and doing it more in a traditional fashion. And again, if you are one of those aspiring guys and one of those books, for some of the advanced guys, as well as some of the guys that are just driven with a passion like we were, you do have Brewing Up a Business by, it's got Sam. Obviously, everything with Dogfish Head that in his adventures that he actually had. So there's a lot of great literature. So good job, JM. That was a good piece on there. Big hands for you. And that's for us right now. That's it. That's going to wrap up the first portion of it. So we'll chop this up a little bit. That way you can get what it is that you want to get. And from here, if you hang out with us, we're going to move forward to the homebrewing equipment, what to buy, how much it costs, and JM and I are both going to tag back and forth on that piece a little bit. So we hope you hang out and stay with us. Yeah. I got bigger applause than the big man himself because I hit the wrong button for myself. But we're gonna continue on with it anyway. So welcome back to the second segment of this show, and we're gonna talk a little bit about brewing equipment. I'm gonna pull off of Jason a lot for this, so you're gonna see a little bit of back and forth from us. And on the front end, I want to tell you that we are obtainable and reachable. We're going to have the King JP himself hopefully put up some links on the YouTube page that you can kick off on. So any of the things we're talking about, especially when you look at the books and equipment and YouTube and Facebook, things of that nature. How to find that. Going off of the last segment just for a slight little bit. You got to be very careful about some of the social media that's out there. Some of it is accurate, but sometimes some of it is not. And then take a look around your AO for different clubs that could be around the area, homebrewing clubs that you can be part of. And definitely Jason, JM, the big man himself, and I are we're obtainable, basically. So you can reach out to us and ask us questions. Now, going with that, we're going to talk about homebrew equipment. And the very first thing before, if you haven't even started brewing, you're thinking about brewing, because let me tell you, the craft industry right now is 7.5% of the market, which is still a small margin, but it's increased significantly over the last few years, and it continues to grow. So there is a very big passion for this, and I want you to ride that wave, and I want you on the cause with us, and I want you to pay attention to some of the stuff that we are talking about for the cause. However, what I don't want you to do is think that you got to go in and buy everything in a store to try to be the brewers of the brewer. A lot of people want to do a bunch of startup stuff. A lot of people want to do home brewing, and I don't want you to be afraid of it. But it's not as complex, or it doesn't have to be, as what it is you're making it, or some people are making it. And they're going to some of these places and getting robbed. Again, and I'll talk to the big man. He'll tie into it a little bit, but it is a business for some of these guys, and I will not try to direct you outside of your local area. I want you to shop and stay local. I just want you to remain educated. And one of the bigger things for you is you need to know what type of brewer you want to be. What it is that you're actually looking at doing. My suggestion would be small baby steps at first. Jason and I kind of jumped in head first. We did a bunch of all grain stuff and continued to do it, but it might not necessarily be for you, because no matter what type or what level you're brewing, the one thing that you can't equate or change is the time that is necessary in doing this stuff. So first of all, beyond anything else, figure out what type of brewer that you want to be. What is your end game? Where is your goals? And what is your base knowledge at this point? And if it's not much, take a step back, relax, and start at a very basic level. So, Jason, go ahead, buddy. Chime in on this one. What do you think about, more specifically, the homebrew shops, good, bad, indifferent? And what type of brewer people should, at least initially at the beginning, look at what they should be doing?
Thanks, Jamie. I think when you're getting started, the one thing you want to do in this whole, as I like to call it, kind of a sickness, if you will, or a virus, because it is infectious and it does spread fast. But when you're getting started, you have to really honestly look at the space you have to work, the time period that you have to put it into it. Take into consideration your weather. If you're going to brew indoors versus outdoors, the equipment you get into is definitely going to be driven by that. When it comes to homebrew store, I would say don't shy away from those guys, but you got to remember that they are in business to sell you gear, and they are smaller than a lot of the online retailers. And if you're on a budget and trying to be thrifty when you're getting started, or like I did, decided I didn't want to invest, a couple $100 and then find out this wasn't for me, you can do it on the cheap, but it does involve a little bit of time You may not get started right when you want, and you're going to have to do some research and find out, okay, if the online guy has a couple of bucks less, is it really worth it when it comes down to by the time you got to pay for shipping and all that?
Good. Yeah, great points, buddy. Yeah, so that's well taken. So we're when we keep moving on forward, once you figure out what type of brewer you want to be, how you're going to articulate that, etc., and if you use the resources, initially we talked about books. And get into the books, find people to help you, ask questions before you get there. So that's the number one thing you got to do and pay attention and watch out for. And the only reason I say that is because there's an article that I did on iHeartBeer.net, and it's called Brewing on a Budget. And the reason I did that article was because I had a friend of mine that called me, shot me some emails and stuff, and asked me a bunch of questions about the brewing, because you know your brewers in your local area, because we don't shut up about beer. So you know exactly who we are. So he reached out to me, and he told me about what it was that somebody was trying to charge him, and I was like, no, man, this ain't right. So let's take a step back, look at the bigger picture, and proceed forward from there. So I asked him a series of questions, what it is he wanted to try to do, and that's what dealt from this. So everything that we are going to discuss from here is going to be on iHeartBeer.net. You're going to hear me plug them to death, obviously, but truth be told, between JM and I, that's a great group of guys, Pints Templars, and that's a great resource for you to use. But it will be the breakdown, and you can see different components, etc. But the first thing we'll talk about when it comes to the equipment is sanitation. Now, I will tell you this. You definitely need to make sure that you are very decent at cleaning your material. And JM and I, the big man, Jason and I, will go back and forth a little bit, I'm sure, on this, but you have to be the bonsai cleaner, baby. Bonsai! You got to have that stuff down and understand that, listen, it's, I would say 99% janitorial. It's 75%, but there's a lot of cleaning that's there. So what cleaning agent are you going to get to use? I use Star San. Something to clean everything with. It's one of those 1 ounces basically will make 5 gallons of cleaner. It's made from food grade phosphoric acid. It's odorless. It's flavorless. No rinsing is actually required, which I gotta tell you the truth, I rinse, but no rinsing is required. Works in about 1 to 2 minutes if it sits on it, and it's reusable for up to 4 to 8 weeks. 8-ounce bottle costs about $9.99, and I know you're like, what? That's expensive. It's not that bad, because you can not actually flush that stuff down the toilet. There's a lot of it that you can actually reuse again. I take Star San. You can use it to sanitize stuff and clean the house and everything. I will say one thing with Star San is you will be able to tell the difference in your water. I'm on a well. I've had it treated. I've actually, I see, we've had it sent out there to a lab. I know what, and I'm not going to dive into too much detail on what my water table looks like. So when I put it in there, it stays clear. When you put it in your water, if it has a bunch of different deposits in there, chlorine, etc., you'll see it turn white. I don't reuse it. 2 weeks is usually my limit. I keep it for about 2 weeks, and then I reuse that stuff. So, Jason, I know you're gonna. Please tell everybody you're not the over sanitation story a little bit, but let them know what you use, because what you use works, is effective, and it definitely doesn't cost as much as Star San. So. Go ahead, bud.
All right, so well, I too use the Star Scene, but I do a 2-stage. I do what you can find in the homebrew stores called a PBW powder beer wash. I usually do my buckets that I ferment in, bottling bucket, and the bottles that I bottle my beer in. I do them with a soak in that. The layman's equivalent is OxyClean, but you want to make sure you find the OxyClean free, because there is a scented one, and I don't think you want house cleaning solvent smelling beer, so you definitely want the scent free one. But it generally runs about $6 for I think it's a pound, or it might be a 3/4 of a pound. But I started September 2014. I have about a quarter of my OxyClean Free left at this point. I'm about to go on to batch 16, so about every 2 weeks. That kind of tells you how quick you go through that. I don't use that I buy for home brewing for stuff around the house. I do use the Star San because not only do I brew beer, but we like to brew tea. And one of the things that I found that people might appreciate is your tea maker gets all nasty looking. A couple shots of Star San, let it sit, boom, rinse it out, brand new. So Star San works. I do mine in a 5-gallon bucket. I let it sit for 3 months. So I think I might have used a quarter of my $10 container of Star San. I do not rinse. I am not afraid to fear the. I do not fear the foam, and unless there's a lot. I mean, I have to quantify that. I mean, if there's a giant amount in it, I'm gonna dump it out. But if there's a bunch of foam, I'm not afraid to rack beer into some Star San foam. No fear on that one. Everything comes out fine. I will say Star San does have a warning that says don't ingest it, but if you talk to the manufacturer, it's something that they're required to label because of our wonderful FDA, but in fact it's biodegradable and does not harm you, but don't go chugging it down because it's not good for you either in large amounts. But then the small exposure you get when it comes to home brewing, there's nothing wrong with it. It's not going to harm you. You don't have to worry about it. When it comes to my process, I'm not going to bring that up now because we're talking to a different audience. When we go a little more advanced, I'll talk about some of the things I've kind of ventured off with my sanitation, or as Jamie would say, lack thereof. But if you're in doubt in the beginning, make sure you got it nice and clean. If you're worried about anything, blast it with the Star San, give it a couple minutes, and then rock and roll with it.
Great point, buddy. I appreciate that. So a lot of great points that were put out there. So the brewing pod, we're going to move on to that because that is probably one of the biggest initial expenses that you will actually have if you're looking at brewing on a budget, and it does not have to be. Now, I am not an advocate of Walmart. In fact, I cannot really tell you the last time that I ended up shopping there. However, I will say they are everywhere, and one of the best pieces of gear that you could probably pull out of that place is a bottle canner that is going to be about $20. Now that's the 5-gallon ones. I will tell you, if the bigger the better. You'll see people grab the 3-gallon ones or 3.5s or whatever they are. The bigger the better, and that's what I would start with, especially if you're trying to brew on a budget and just get into it. It works just as effective. It does wear out sooner, but for $20, I mean, it's your throwaway pan, and it can do exactly everything that a expensive one can end up doing as well. So, Jason, I know you started with something too. What did you start with?
Well, I did resort to the Wally World stainless. My kettle is a 4-gallon. I had initial waverings on what I was going to do, and if you're an extract brewer, you don't necessarily need a big 5, 6, 7, 8-gallon pot, whereas it's definitely more beneficial if you're going to do more brew in a bag or all grain. You want to try to get a full volume boil. So it's what I've got works, but is that going to be the first upgrade when I'm ready here soon to upgrade? Absolutely. If $45, I did see they've started carrying them at Walmart. They're a 5.5-gallon kettle, which would not be a bad thing to start with. It's kind of depending on where you're at. $40 to $45 will get you one of those home and started. The one I've got really is a $20 throwaway. It's not the enamel coated food canning bucket, which does work. It is stainless, but it is very thin, and I'm sure with enough high heat usage that thing's going to be warped like Mad Dog. So it's not seen the actual flame burner since the giant sooty mess that I drug in the house, and my wife about nearly killed me for doing it on the first go around. So I've done everything on the stovetop. So it'll last a little bit longer that way, but if you're going to do it over an open flame, it's worth going out and spending, 60, $70. Like I said, there's a lot of guys that get started and give up, so don't be afraid to check for something used. And don't be afraid to talk to some of us guys that are talking about brewing, because sometimes guys have upgraded and moved on, and lo and behold, they've got 16 kettles sitting in the corner of their garage, and they'd be happy to give you 2 or 3 if you ask. So if you're trying to brew on a budget, there's lots of ways to do it. So I'll kick it back to you, Jamie, and let's keep rolling.
Good deal. Thanks, brother. That was good, too. Moving on to that, we're going to talk about the thermostat itself. Now, you're going to need a longer thermostat, and typically you want to make sure that it's good for between 40 to 180 degrees. One of the biggest misuses, I think, of the thermostat that people will do is they'll just get it and they'll use it. I suggest that you calibrate it. Now, the water boils at a certain temperature, different elevations, etc. It's very easy to find out, at what point you would have to utilize that to calibrate it at what temperatures. But you're definitely going to need a long one. And most of your brew shops will carry it, and other online sources will actually carry it, and it will actually have a clip to it as well that you can push down into it. So it sits on the side of your kettle. I will caution you again, one of the things you want to do is make sure that you push it down to the bottom and back it probably about halfway out, simply because if it's all the way towards the bottom or whatever your heat source is, it's going to give you a higher reading towards the bottom than on top. That plays a big portion, not as much with the extracts, but some of the brew in the bag stuff that they do. But more specifically, you definitely want to make sure if you're going to use the same one to move it over, to check your wort temperature prior to putting it in a fermentation vessel before you pitch your yeast. You're going to want to make sure that those temperatures are exactly on point. So then you'll need to transfer everything, all that hard work you did, to a boiling pot. To do that, you're going to need a 24-inch curved plastic racking tube. That plastic racking tube is nothing more than a plastic tube. This is a J-hook. Costs about $2.49. You'll need a racking tube holder, which is funny. It costs about the same as the actual racking tube. The holder is nothing more than a little red clip, and or black or gray or whatever color that it goes onto that tube that holds it snugly up against the side of the pot and or fermentation vessel or whatever. And a 3/8 siphon hose. That goes about $1.49 a foot. I would say you need about 6 feet. Cost for that would be about $8.49 for 6 feet. So that whole little setup right there is going to cost you about $13.47. Now, you got to transfer everything. So once it's done, you have to transfer your wort into the primary fermentation vessel, which typically is going to end up being the best bang for your buck is going to be a 6.5 gallon fermentation bucket. Those cost about $18.98. So you'll also need a 6.5 gallon bottling bucket, which costs about $14.99. A bottling spigot now for it, which will cost you $3.99. So for your fermentation vessel, you will also need a lid, which is going to cost you $1.49. And I know a lot of you are telling me like it doesn't come with it. It does not. All these singular pieces typically are separate. And when people start talking to you about kits and selling you kits, pay very attention to what is actually in it. And that's why I would tell you to, get a home brewer or somebody to go with you to execute that stuff to help you out with it. If you choose to transfer your beer into a fermentation vessel for the secondary fermentation process, my recommendation would be to transfer it into a bottling bucket. What I mean by that is this. Now, I rack. I don't filter. Most of us, when you start off, you will not filter. I can't say I haven't filtered, but typically I do not filter my beers. But if you have a primary fermentation vessel, that's when you initially take your wort. At that point, you drop it into the primary fermentation bucket. You check the temperature, you put your yeast in there. It will sit in there for a duration. Roughly about halfway between, you have a decision and choice that you can do. You can either take it out of that primary fermentation, rack it into another fermentation vessel, which would be considered secondary fermentation, and then rack it from there into the bottling bucket and or keg if you wanted to. That's what I do. It helps clarify the beer. A lot of that dead yeast and sediment drops out of suspension, but the problem with that is you lose. You lose a lot of volume. So I've seen it and tasted beers that were just fine when they literally would just take it, put it in the primary, keep it there, rack it into the secondary, into the bottling bucket itself, let that sit there for a duration, and then go ahead and bottle it from that position right there. So I have everything. I tend to gravitate towards some of the plastic buckets and stuff as well, but glass carboys, and there's a lot of other stuff that I've had. The solid stainless steel fermentation vessels itself, etc. Jason, I'm gonna pitch this one to you because you've got a pretty interesting story when it came to brewing on a budget as well on what you use for fermentation.
Yeah, I definitely got started on the cheap. My father-in-law works in the restaurant business, hooked us up with a bunch of pickle and sauerkraut buckets, which actually were intended for a whole other use and didn't go that route. So I had about 16 of them, and I went through them all, fitted the lids, tried to find the ones that sealed the best. Granted, when you're using these kind of buckets, they are food grade buckets, so they will last for some period of time, but they do get scratched. You get bacteria and other things, and you got to expect to move those along. If you get into sour beers, which I'm starting to get into, those guys that you expire from your standard beer gear setup, you can definitely move those on to a sour beer. Although a lot of the guys that brew sour beers say you want something that seals very well for doing those. So give it a try. I'm all for trying things once or twice when it comes to this whole process. It definitely is a process. And with that said, one of the things you kind of need to be willing to do is, yes, you want to take other people's advice, but you also want to find what works for you. So right now for me, I'm about as low budget, low tech as you can get. I started with those buckets. I have those buckets. I used a hole saw, drilled a hole in the lid. I've got a carboy bung, which is a little bit bigger than the rubber grommet you can find. It's a hard plastic. And with the tiniest hole saw that I've got for my drill, found out that carboy bung fits perfect, seals well. So I've got a couple buckets with that. I've got an old beat up 5-gallon water jug that was given to me through a carboy, universal carboy cap on that bad boy. First batch is in that right now. Worked very well. It's BPA free plastic, food grade. If it's going to hold your drinking water, it's going to hold your beer. Jamie mentioned racking the secondary or even tertiary, which would be a third vessel. When I started, the bottling bucket with the spigot was all I had. So it was the bottling bucket and the fermentation vessel all in one. I did find that some of the yeast esters kind of get hanging around in that, so it's not the best idea if you want to get the cleanest tasting beer to do it all in one container. But if you're in an apartment and your only option is one tiny space, it is not beyond making good beer and doing it all in one container. The one thing I will say, with all the yeast and things that are sitting in the bottom and the gunk that's left over from the brewing process and the fermentation as it goes along, which is called trub, that'll sit in the bottom. Looks kind of like a greenish brownish yellowish paste. My best friend has been one of those little 1.5 inch stainless steel T-balls for brewing tea. Fits right over the bulkhead for the spigot of your bottling bucket, and it does a wonderful job of filtering out all that junk. Now, granted, if you're racking, your beer is going to look a lot clearer than the stuff I get, but mine, if you find an unfiltered craft brew, mine looks very similar most of the time. So
Great. Again, good points. So we're going to move on to the bottling process itself. So you pretty much already have the siphoning hose and everything else that you will need. The other portion of it that you will need for bottling is a bottle capper, which is about $16.99, and then a spring-tipped bottle filler, which is $2.99. Now, you will see people fill them from the actual bottling bucket themselves without using that. The intent behind that spring tip is you put it into the bottle towards the corner. It fills it from the very bottom up, and then it kind of pushes that air out, and you don't have as much oxygen in there. That's the process. I've seen it done both ways. I typically end up kegging a lot of my stuff anyway. So, but when I do bottle, I typically do end up bottling out of the keg itself with a different thing. So, but when I was at the very basic level doing that stuff, either way, it didn't seem to have too much of an effect. Now, total cost for everything that we described is going to be about $124.86. So you can go on iHeartBeer.net, take a look at the article that I put out there, and we'll kind of go down through there. And every piece of equipment above, except for like the boiling pot, typically it can be found in one place. So you can find it in a brew shop. You can also find it, places like Northern Brewer. You can basically the only concern I've got, if you Google and or Yahoo or whatever everybody does for their search engine at this point, beer equipment, you'll see that there is a slew of different, basic and deluxe and medium and all this other stuff. What was put out there in the article is the basic stuff that you would pretty much need, and some of us can probably find some components cheaper. You can go outside the box, but and try to find different things that would fit inside that equation. And these things that we talked about today are based off of, that you have some of the other basic essentials in a kitchen, okay, that you have a can opener, that you have, some basic kitchen equipment. Because especially dealing with extract kits, you're going to need to open up a can and things of that nature. So don't think that this is just it, but that's just the brewing process itself with your basic equipment that most people have in their kitchen. Should be it. So that's what we're looking at now. The big thing is, don't get taken. We'll tie it back in. We're approachable. We are reachable. We will assist you in your fight. It took no more than a little text, email, or whatever from somebody else to set me off on this adventure to be like, listen, this guy needs some help, because as big as this has got in the craft beer industry and how much home brewing is in, I've kind of gone away from having to try to make most of my setup. I typically brew in 15-gallon batches plus. But my setup is, a lot of it was made in the beginning, and that's not the way now. Everything's out there and it's more accessible, and I would say start small. In fact, you even have the smaller kits, the 3-gallon kits and things that you can buy from places just to test your grit to see if it's something that it is that you want to do. But by all means, you don't have to do it by yourself. Again, we drink together, we brew together, and we're going to stand together. That's one of the parts to the cause, and that will close out the equipment part of episode 1. So next is going to be, we're gonna break back a little bit, open up some beer. We're going to relax a little bit more, not be as technical, probably get into some entertaining stuff. We're going to kick back and forth about some beer news, and then as well as plugs. So please stick around for us, and we'll be back here shortly. The claps are a little bit early, but here it is, our news. All right, so we are back this next episode, which is going to be the news, and we are. I've got my Pimp News jacket on, and we're gonna cover this one together. So this is going to be a little bit of news, the plugs, and then we're going to close out and call it a night for the most part. So JM, I'm looking at Bills. Brewing in Austin could hurt or help Texas craft beer. This is something that came out. Laws that were enacted in the wake of the prohibition haven't kept up with the evolution of the niche and the market that we have. Brewers say that they are looking for lawmakers to chip away at limits in distribution and marketing. Meanwhile, the distributors see the craft brewers as trying to break a carefully constructed deal. You hear that? A carefully constructed deal, three-tier deal for somebody else, right? That those brewers are trying to take it away. So brewers say that they rely on basically, especially in Texas now, the word of mouth from diehard enthusiasts to be able to get that information that's out there. So they want drinkers, to particularly those from that state, to introduce their beers to friends, neighbors, and etc. So a measure offered by Senator Kevin, I think it was Atliff, is a Republican, would let brewer visitors purchase beer on site and take it home with them. Now, I knew this happened in Florida, and it was a smaller growlers and stuff. And I'll be honest, I did also know that behind the scenes, Texas was later. I know they're going to be upset, but Texas was later on the craft beer industry itself, but it completely blew up faster than most, and that's evident by how many Templars and stuff that we got there. And I'm diehard trying to get Virginia on the same page with that, man. But what you said, you knew about that, right? You know that that they couldn't do that and etc. or do the growler thing, correct?
Yeah, there's definitely some wacky, twisted, and backward laws out there. Some of the lesser-known facts to most people is the state of Pennsylvania recently made it okay for the craft breweries to offer 12 packs to the general public for consumption. Prior to this being put into effect a couple weeks ago, you could only buy a Pick 6 or a case. There was no 12-pack available from anything but macros. Craft breweries were not allowed to distribute 12-packs or sell those, so the general public couldn't even consume a 12-pack if they wanted. You did touch on Florida. Florida, you cannot get a 64-ounce growler, but you can take a gallon or two 32-ounce growlers out from a tap room or a craft brewery. And of course, Budweiser and Miller Coors have stepped in Florida and assaulted the legislature there, and they're trying to make it so that yes, the general public can carry out a 64-ounce growler in Florida, but with that, the brewery has to sell their beer to the distributor, buy it back, and then sell it to us. So, three-tier lives long, lives strong, but at some point it's going to die, I hope. But one of the other things that we had talked about was Kentucky. They passed a law that was aimed at stopping the big brewers because Budweiser, AB InBev, had owned one distributor and bought a second and was looking at a third. And the Brewers Association and the craft brewers in the Kentucky area, which is kind of just starting to blossom there, were worried that with big brewery-owned distribution, they would get cut out of what gets put in the store shelves. And I have seen that happen here with the local gas station in my little village. The owner says, tell me what you want. We'll try to get it. But on the days when he's not around and the distributor stops in, all the wonderful stuff we've asked for that was there suddenly gets ripped out, and all the big brand stuff gets dropped back in on the shelves. So that is somewhat factual, but the thing that the little guys didn't take in consideration is that Rheingeist from Cincinnati, which is now the biggest Southern Ohio brewer, and possibly pushing the biggest brewery in the state as far as production and distribution. They had opened a River Ghost distributing in northern Kentucky. So because of this new Kentucky law, at some point they're going to be forced back out of Kentucky. But they are still distributing, they're still running. But with the passage of the Kentucky law, they did migrate north in Ohio, have opened their Columbus distribution, and they'll just continue spreading out. Of course, they're going to have to go around Kentucky because now they're not allowed to distribute because they are a brewery. And that's one of the things that's frustrating to me when this legislations get put in with broad brushes, broad categories left in. I think had Kentucky really thought about it and done less of an emotional reaction, they would have made it so that a brewery over a certain size could not own distribution in their state. But as it rolls, River Ghost is going to be gone at some point, so they were planning on strictly catering to the craft guys, so they've lost that outlet. But at the same point, AB has owned the one distribution outlet that they've owned since '79. They're going to be forced to sell that, and the one they just bought, they're going to be forced to get rid of that too. So Budweiser, as you saw over the Super Bowl, went a straight attack on craft beer. Right after they bought 3 of the biggest craft beer outlets they could get their hands on the East and West Coast. So some of that stuff is questionable, but the one thing that a lot of people in the business forget is any publicity, really, when you come down to it, is publicity. So I'm sure Budweiser kind of rebounded on some sales with that attack on craft beer. But one of the cool things is Smokehouse Tavern and Brewery in Columbus is going to drop either this weekend or next weekend their pumpkin peach ale directly fired back at Budweiser's commercial from the Super Bowl. So I'm going to try to get my hands on some of that, so keep an eye out for a tasting notes on that coming before too long here.
Good. All right. So good. So that kind of wraps that part up too. But one of the things I wanted to talk about, continue to though, is Texas specifically, the legislation offered by Senator Thompson, who is a Democrat out of Houston, would slash distribution rights, and we're talking about the Thomas bill. Her bill would reduce the number of barrels that microbreweries in the state of Texas could self-distribute. This is what I got for you, Senator Thompson. Not buying it, because this kind of crap happens all the time, and I'm not sure why politics has become so embedded into this to begin with. So we already have problems with the market itself, but it's funny because they have a advocate that's down there, and this is where you said it's a double-edged sword sometimes, but you have Ricky Donnelly, president of the Beer Alliance of Texas, said that his group helped bring craft brewers and others together to compromise on legislation 2 years ago. He further goes on and says that Donnelly said craft brewers are thriving in the current system, and that they already have every tool that they need now to have access to the market. Steve Verkry, founder of Four Corners, and I know I'm botching his name, literally in the same article said that the day that bill was filed, one of his drivers asked him what that meant, and he said, "Hey, brother," essentially, it meant that you're out of a job if this bill processes. So that's another one to look out for. Let's get rid of that, and we're going to move on. So one of the other things I want to talk about is inside beer news is the there's a new craft beer festival to help financially ailing Gurney American Legion. Now, as well as you, I'm sure you were like, where is Gurney? Gurney is out of Milwaukee in Illinois. They had a request for video gambling that ended up being denied. Their Legion Post 771, the members will bank on craft beer to help provide a financial lifeline to ensure the organization's future. So essentially what happened was, they had to bill in for the gambling things to put in there. This small town out there said, listen, this isn't going to happen. They're going to put together a craft beer event specifically driven for the American Legions. Hassel said that the post was down, and Hassel's one of the members of the American Legion post. They were down to its last $65,000. And to some people that sounds a lot, but to a post it's not. And the reason I wanted to bring this up, and we carry national across the board, was I've said for a very long time that a lot of the posts that I go to, you have this transition that's going, that the old timers are kind of going away. The day of, the Budweiser and all that, and InBev and every part of them is kind of gone. That's all they kept on tap. And I kept telling these people. And one of the legions that I worked with, they put beer, and in fact, I did an event a couple weeks ago. I brought a bunch of beer up. You want to talk about some bootlegging, but I brought it up and we served it, and it's a hit for a lot of people. So that could save them, and I'm sure it will. I'm sure that they are going to do a craft beer event for that Legion specifically, and that money is going to be donated towards them again, and it's going to help them survive. So I don't know what you got, JM, in that matter, but I'm a big fan of it. I think craft beer can actually continue to help them. A little bit of young blood and some craft beer. Give them some events to kick it towards them, and the money goes back towards the troops somehow, some way, and or their family, and some compassion. So I know you're very passionate about this, brother, so go ahead, please. What do you think about that?
Well, I think, kudos on them for finally realizing where some of their niche is going to lie. I mean, definitely, like you said, a lot of the older crowd at these venues is gone. And, we kind of cut to the chase on it, really. I mean, I think my dad is more kind of the exception than the rule. My dad's 63 years old, and my dad loves craft beer, but my dad doesn't go buy craft beer. Dad likes Old Milwaukee. He likes Coors Extra Gold. But when he hangs around me, next thing I know, he's drinking, Lagunitas Espresso Stout for his birthday. That was a little gift from me. So, and then he's like, "Oh, you mean there's coffee beer? I'd rather drink that in the morning than a coffee."
Beautiful. Absolutely. So the one of the last things I've got, and you said you tweet, and I missed it somehow on your tweets. JM Ham.
It's JM I Heart Beer, actually.
Okay, JM I Heart Beer. I messed it up. I was friends
That's
with
all right.
JM I Heart Beer. You did tweet this out, and I missed it somehow. I thought I was bringing you some news. Check this out, because it was cool. So here's a cool bit of news. Fragments of the ancient beer brewing basins unearthed in Tel Aviv indicate that Egyptians more than 5,000 years ago had settled farther north than previously known. And how did they know this? Well, they were embedded in what is now Israel's most hard-partying city because they found a bunch of fragments essentially going back in the day, and a lot of them that says that these boys were making a ton of beer. Now, you trace the history back a little bit, when they built the pyramids, it was a gallon of beer a day or whatever, and I think if you watch How Beer Saved the World is another good plug out there that they put it out there, and they talked about that. So the Egyptians loved their beer, and it was out there. So God bless them. Lots of beer that were going on as well. So, and the last thing, and I'm going to quiz you on this, and we're going to talk about American Craft Beer Week. I'm pretty sure you're going to get it this time. So, all right. So, when we're looking at American Craft Beer Week, if you typically remember before, if you go back in time, it was prior to 2006. We basically had it for a whole month. Typically, it was in July. Well, the Brewers Association decided, like, listen, we're going to manage this a little bit better. We're going to make it a week. And at that point, they added craft towards it into the name, so it's American Craft Beer Week. That way, it isolated what market it was. Basically, they wanted to hit. Not that InBev and everybody else is going to try to capitalize on it too, but so you know, it's for craft beer. And if you need the definition for that, you can check it out at the Brewers Association. They have the definition listed up there too. But more specifically, when it came to American Craft Beer Week, in May 18th of 2010, House Resolution 1297 was passed recognizing an annual celebration in breweries, restaurants, and beer stores by craft brewers and home brewers nationwide. Now, according to the Brewers Association, last year 50 states participated, as well as 2004 official brewery events ended up happening. There are sites, there are logos, there's a bunch of other stuff that I did or I wrote on. If you want any further information on this, you can go ahead and go to iheartbeer.net and take a look at it. And I am going to quiz you, Jason, this year. I'm not looking for the dates, but this year, what month are we going to hold American Craft Beer Week?
I'll have to say, Alex, what is May?
Good job. Yeah. What is May? It is May. So we're going to celebrate it May 11th to the 17th. That is also out there. Hey, again, we said 7.5% last year. I think we captured the market on. That's a lot better than what has been in the past. We got a long way to go towards the cause, but for the most part, it's worth celebrating. So keep that on the look. And, you know, I got to definitely give a shout out to my boy over there, Jason, who landed a exclusive interview with Long Trail, I believe it was, right? So,
Yep, out of Vermont.
Out of Vermont, landed in Ohio. He got the exclusive, put it out there on iHeartBeer.net. First one to actually grab that, so you need to go watch that stuff too. So, my man, let me say good job.
Back at you, brother.
Good job. I'm going to go ahead and, you know, I'm going to kick it to you. Go ahead, do your plugs and closing remarks, and I will take us away.
All right. Definitely want to throw it out there to my brothers in brewing at 50 West Brewing down in Cincinnati. I was out there over the weekend. Their first ever bottle release, a nice sour beer called Brett is my co-pilot. It's a 4.6er. It's a pale ale, 100% brewed with Brettanomyces, and you'll see some stuff coming up from me on iHeartBeer mentioning it, but the guys at the brewery said this baby is going to be best enjoyed in about 18 months. So as hard as it is for me to do, the 2-bottle limit that I was able to score is going to sit in the fridge for a year and a half, so look for that later down the road. I will work that into a sour beer review at some point. But I'm going to let it go to peak so that I can get the most enjoyment out of it. Also, the boys in Covington, kudos to Braxton Brewing, had their opening. They were funded through Kickstarter, local media, WCPO, Jesse from there, Jesse Folk, and some of the other Brew Professor, Queen City Beer, some of the other Cincinnati area blogs were very heavily in favor of those guys getting started. And one of the awesome things at the brewery, I went down on Saturday, the day after their grand opening, checked the place out. I will have some information again on iHeartBeer.net about the place, but very impressed, very nice place. And they actually have a wall dedicated to all of those that helped them get off the ground. And all of the people that donated to Kickstarter. There's a whole giant display on the wall mentioning all the contributors. So it is definitely a community project that got those guys off the ground. They're very passionate about it. They do a great job with what they've got. They're offering 4 beers, and the one that I've been impatiently awaiting for comes out next week. It is a tropical stout, and I don't know anybody else that's making one, but I've heard a few people say a box of cocoa. So I am excited to see what comes of that next week. It should be on tap, I'm told, and we'll definitely be taking a growler down there after work to sort it out and see what I think about that. And then one other local group near and dear to the Cincinnati area that just is kicking off their soft openings this week is Taft Ale House. A friend of mine from the Cincinnati Malt Infusers Homebrew Club, also owner of the Brew Monkeys homebrew store on the west side of Cincinnati. Chris Nasmacino was there for the soft open, sampled the beer, took pictures of the place. That place looks to be an amazing venue, comes very highly regarded from Chris, and definitely can't wait to get down there and get my taste buds around several of the beers that they're offering. So really nice things in Cincinnati and Northern Kentucky going on for me and those of us beer fans in my area of Southwest Ohio. And one of the things I'll throw out there for people that don't know, pre-Prohibition, the majority of your beer and the majority of your hops came from the Queen City. A lot of people do not realize that, do not recognize that, do not know that, but Cincinnati's heritage is the German and Irish population that settled there and the brew that they loved, and brewing was the thing. I had even seen some stuff in some of the brewing history books that I've been looking at that literally every corner had homebrew as it was. I mean, it was the essential of craft brewing. Every guy that had an outlet was brewing something pre-Prohibition times. So I could only imagine what the city smelled like back in the 1800s. And later, but just, I mean, if you look at in your local neighborhoods where all these fast food stores have popped up like one after the other, I don't think anybody could imagine going from literally almost door to door to door and having beer, beer, beer. But the book kind of portrayed that that's really how Cincinnati was, and it's quite amazing. But they had the big Ohio River, and it goes, a long ways to being by waterways back then was how they got the stuff from one place to the other, and Queen City leaned on that and used their German and Irish heritage and the beer that they loved and pushed it out everywhere. So it's nice to see it really coming back.
All right, man. God bless you, and I think that's we are definitely going to try to wrap this up, and I'd be amiss if I didn't thank you, Jason. Thanks for hanging out with us and doing what it is that we do. At the same time, I want to thank JP for giving us this platform and working with us on this. And brother, I know today was your first official day working towards iHeartBeer.net for the full time, and I'm excited for you and what it is you're trying to do. At the same time, Ed, I'd be missed. I missed you again the one time before, but I'm not missing you now, brother. Ed is the editor for iHeartBeer.net. He does a lot for us. He basically takes the stuff that we give him and makes it just look a little bit better than what we would. So God bless you, Ed. And he's also helped us out with the show, and he's had some input and stuff on there too. So we're carrying our way forward. There's a lot of great people that are around there in this community that we're trying to bring into the equation for iHeartBeer and iHeartBeer TV that we are doing right now. Jason and Jason out of Pittsburgh over a couple of beers. Great guys. I know they do great podcasts. You see me push a lot of stuff out. If you want to follow me at Blunt Forest Brewing, on Facebook and/or check us out at bluntforcebrewing.com and check out the vision of what we're trying to do. Please do. That's a good way to get a hold of me and reach out to me for any assistance that you need. But realistically, hey, this is it. So to you, we do this to get the information out because we love what it is that we do. Our wives put up with half the BS that we do because of the passion that we actually have for this, and they can see that as well. So we're out there for you. So to the Templars that are watching, our fellow brothers, as well as the two different chapters that we got, but to the VA chapter guys, God bless you. That one's for you. And stick around next week, or I don't know about a week, but soon. We're going to have JP on for episode 2, and we're going to have a special guest with the Templars with us as well, and we're going to continue on. So, again, take a look at iHeartBeer.net. You can take a look at everything that we're trying to do, as well as the Hx2 hour. There's an article that's out there as well. Great read, great people. Put you on the righteous path, man, and stick with the brothers. So with that, I bid you adieu, and good night, everybody.
You're a classy craft beer fan.